Welcome to Duel Talk with Brian Galloway and Henry Robb, sponsored by Duel Threads, your source for motivational apparel. What's up, Warriors? Welcome back to Duel Talk. This is episode 3. I'm Brian Galloway, and alongside me, as always, the one, the only Henry Hawk Robb. How you doing, Henry?
Hey, Brian. How's it going?
Going good, man.
Today, we've kind of teased a special guest that we have, and I want to introduce everybody to Jenna, who is a good friend of mine. I've known Jenna for a long time now. She's a doctoral student, physical therapist in her last year. She has experience in treating patients in the hospital following brain injuries, servicemen and women in the military, as well as in sports-specific rehabilitation, and she has worked for a number of different hospitals and facilities in the New York area. Hi, Jenna. How's it going?
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here.
Before we get into the meat and bones of the actual interview, I want to talk about your experience in treating patients with brain injuries and how you kind of got into that.
Yeah, so I kind of got into head injuries in my undergrad days, which then eventually led to my doctorate. I worked with a number of patients with concussions, actually Hawk being one of them.
No way.
I wanted to get into this because I wanted my 5 minutes of fame, yeah.
He wanted his 5 minutes of fame on it, but it's kind of what got me started on it in the first place. You know, when you're standing on the sidelines and at the time you're just a friend watching somebody not able to stand, not able to think straight. They look at you like they're surprised that you're standing there, haven't seen you in 5 years. So it's kind of what sparked my interest in it. And I then translated the sports-specific knowledge on concussions to working with our men and women in the military, and that's something I've been doing probably about this past 6 years or so. So you can thank Hawk for this, I guess.
I just want to get my 5 minutes of fame before we went on to the interview.
Exactly. He was waiting for it. He was waiting for it.
No one could see the smile on his face except for us since we have the video going, but I saw what was coming. So let's just jump right into it. I mean, you know, Jenna, you're here to help us, all of us, really kind of prevent injuries or, you know, give us tips on that regard, working out and everything, just overall fitness. What are some of the most common ways to prevent injuries, or what are some of the things that, you know, someone either just getting started or someone that's maybe been working out for years, what can they kind of do to improve and stay healthy while getting a workout in?
Yeah, you know, I think that's a really great point, and I actually just gained a ton of experience with this in the past 12 weeks or so, working out in New York City at a pretty large sports-specific population. And so the biggest thing I think I see commonly are people who try to progress their exercises or their workout plans, their intensity a little too quickly. So we develop a bit of a muscle imbalance. That is, one group of muscles, kind of be it the acting muscles or their kind of partners, are a little bit stronger than the muscles you're aiming to target. And so with that, we get a lot of injuries related to kind of joint problems, everything from shoulders and knees, backs, everything in between. Additionally, a lot of the issues that we see are related to nutrition and hydration, right? People who are weekend warriors running half marathons don't necessarily translate into the healthiest of individuals or those without injury. So I think a lot of it is related to pushing the envelope a little too much too quickly. So I tell a lot of my patients, you know, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. So I think the most common way to prevent injury is to be smart about it, educate yourself, and get involved as far as it being a lifestyle, not necessarily just kind of a one-hit wonder.
Yeah, that's a good point. And just to go back on that, so are you saying people are doing maybe too much chest and not enough back, or too many biceps, not enough triceps? What kind of imbalances do you normally see?
So I guess that's kind of like the big picture item. I think in particularly, for example, runners. We see a lot of people coming in with knee problems, and right away it's, oh my gosh, I tore a ligament, when in reality it's kind of an IT band syndrome, a runner's knee, and that's really more so related to weak hips, which is really interesting because right away, like I said, people come in and they're like, oh, this is the end. It's a ligamentous or it's an actual serious injury, when in reality, it's just maybe some of the smaller muscle groups aren't as strong as they could be. So their kind of competitors really pick up the pace. As far as biceps versus triceps, a lot of that has to do with push-pull combinations, right? Working on muscle groups that per se push weight versus pulling weight. And so I think it's important to go with that kind of agonist, antagonist, back and forth routine when you're lifting, but also don't forget about those small muscle groups. And something as simple as, different types of stretching and maybe smaller scale exercises that your grandma might be doing. I always tell my patients, like, I'm doing the same things as you are just to stay healthy. So that's kind of where I was going with that.
Yeah, I was gonna ask too. I was gonna bring that up. Stretching, you see some people that are better about it, whether it's running or it's lifting. Warming up, getting ready to go before their workout and after. So just how important is stretching both pre and post, whether it's something like running or cardio or it's lifting.
I actually, running, stretching rather, is huge, regardless if you're a runner. I always get my favorite are like these big 6'2" guys who are super into bodybuilding, and I love working with them because, I'm a tiny little girl, and I tell them all the time, you can lift as much as you want, but you need to remodel your muscles in a way that we increase the range of motion. And so that's what stretching essentially is doing. It shapes the muscle fibers in a different arrangement, if you will. And once those muscle fibers are arranged in a certain way, you lengthen and strengthen is kind of the quota. So I tell people all the time, stretching beforehand is important. I personally feel that stretching afterward is almost more important. And then even on top of that, just even on your off days, I'm notorious for not liking days off, but making your day off a stretch day, get out there and you're still doing something to contribute to your health and wellness, but it's not as invasive as maybe your full lifting program or a full running program.
So when you say stretching, I know there's a lot of dynamic versus static stretching arguments. Usually for rugby, we did dynamic stretching before practice and then static stretching after. I don't know if there was a difference or maybe there was something that was better or not as good or which one came first.
So I usually don't argue for one being better than the other. The objective with dynamic stretching and dynamic movement is that you're kind of quote unquote warming the muscle up a little bit, getting ready to be doing a dynamic work, especially a sport like rugby, right? You're doing an insane amount of cardio, but you're also having to do cutting activities and you're pushing those muscles and particularly your joints in a different way. So I'd say in a sport like that, dynamic is great. They both achieve that change in muscle fiber orientation in a similar fashion. So maybe if you're about to go for a run or you're about to go for a lift, a dynamic stretch is great. But then after the fact or on your day off, I largely encourage static stretching just to kind of wake those muscles up a little bit and prevent any type of muscle tightness. Because both in lifting and running, those seem to be very limiting factors, and they're quite painful to deal with in the interim.
And then I guess kind of going off of that, so now once someone's finally warmed up, they're ready to go. I mean, this one's kind of catered specifically towards lifting, but you fairly often tend to see somebody that's maybe trying to, you talked about it earlier too, going a little too hard, a little too fast, right off the bat. So how important is form when you're lifting? You always see people trying to put up maybe heavier than they can on the bench, and they're kind of half rep in the weight and everything like that. Just how important is correct form and really not, lifting and straining for more than you can actually handle?
Personally, I'm a huge advocate for form, and I think it's funny. A lot of my young guys come in, and I see a lot of high school students who are just getting into lifting, and they're kind of these great athletes who are really good at lifting certain muscle groups per se, right? Everybody wants to be able to do a killer deadlift, a killer squat, but if your form is incorrect, you're going to get muscle substitution. And if certain muscle groups are substituting instead of those primary movers, that's when we run into those injury issues that we talked about in the beginning, right? So the idea I always tell my patients is work on your form first, right? Start at a lowest level weight. If you come to rehab, I'm going to take the weights away from you and I'm going to have you pushing the bar. I don't care how much you were originally doing, and people don't necessarily like that, but it encourages you to get that form down more than anything. And then you can go from there and increase the intensity, increase the weight that you're pushing.
So is this something where it would be like a deadlift and their form may not be right, so they're using more lower back than they would be hamstrings or legs?
Absolutely, and that's a really common substitution we see. And then thereby after, what do you start to develop is chronic low back pain. And regardless of your age, whether you are, a 20-something-year-old in the gym crushing it, or you're kind of getting older and you're really trying to get back into lifting, low back pain's not fun, shoulder issues, not fun. These are all things that, again, these substitutions lead to problems down the road. So get your form down first and then worry about being a hero later.
I'm going to have you try to kind of fix my personal problem, if you don't mind.
Oh man, put me on the spot.
With Hawk, when with Henry, when I would lift with him, he kind of got me into the squats, and he can blow me out of the water, no doubt, every day of the week. With in terms of putting the weight. Again, we just got finished talking about how that's not the biggest thing. You want correct form, so on and so forth.
Sure.
But for me, it's getting that mobility. It's getting the depth that you always see everybody talking about on Instagram, or anybody talking about squats. They're always talking about depth and proper depth and all that kind of stuff. So that's something I struggle with. So is that just in essence, is that just stretching more often? What's the biggest factor, or what's the biggest way I can improve that?
Well, without looking at you and seeing if you have anything limiting you,
I really
I can
put
speak.
You on the spot.
You did, but I can tell you from the beginning that I happen to have known Hawk in his days before he was able to squat as much as he could. And I think the key thing that he is a perfect example of is when he first started, he was not pushing half as much weight as he currently is. So I think something that you can learn from that is he perfected his form. And then he did the whole lengthen and strengthen bit, right? Get that range of motion down, get that form down so that you are using your primary movers in a squat position, and then work from there, right? I mean, you can ask Buck. He's been lifting I've known him for almost 10 years, and he's been lifting in that amount of time. And so I think if you start from the bottom up, you're going to be in great shape too. Just really work on that form is paramount, and keep stretching.
Now you know why I'm so strong, Brian, because I've had my own personal trainer for the past 10 years.
Yeah,
telling me what to do.
I've only heard of Jenna recently, and it's meanwhile for 10 years you've had this personal, trainer, athletic trainer right at your disposal.
The best kept secret over here.
I always go to her with my shoulder and knee and back issues, and she tries to fix me over the phone.
There you go.
It is telemedicine. We're making it happen.
So something that I hate is a rest day. But what do you think is, what's the benefit of a rest day? Obviously, you're resting the muscles, but what's the benefit of a rest day versus stretch day versus a full lift day?
So I guess without really getting into the weeds of the muscle physiology, right? The concept is that when you're lifting weights, you are kind of doing micro damage to the muscle in itself. And it's not something that's a bad thing, but it's kind of how we regenerate, right? We have all these different types of cell messengers, and there's a ton of great biology that if you want to talk about it, we'll get into it. But the general concept is that as these muscles become damaged, they need time to repair. And so the best way to then repair the muscle is to give it a break. A lot of injuries we see, since we're really on the topic of injury prevention, is overuse injuries, right? These are people who push the envelope. And I will be honest, I'm training for my first marathon, and I am very guilty of it myself, and I'm currently nursing some bursitis in my hip because of it. But if you take that rest day and really take it as a chance to allow your body to heal, and that's not an excuse to, go binge on Ben and Jerry's, take it as a rest day, but stick to your nutrition plan, stick to your game plan a little bit. But I just think it's so pivotal. I encourage my patients largely who are rehabbing, start slower, incorporate more rest days. But generally speaking, 1 to 2 rest days a week does the body good.
So what do you think's a good? All right, so today, say if I have a rest day next week and I want to do something, maybe a brisk 20-minute walk or just something to keep the blood flowing, or.
Yeah, I am the queen of cardiovascular activity, and so I encourage it highly. A 20-minute walk is not going to kill you. I happen to live in a city, so I am walking constantly, and I count that as get a Fitbit going, get a heart rate monitor. In addition to that, I'm a really big proponent for yoga, Pilates, that sort of stuff. A lot of anything that encourages core stabilization, anything incorporating stretching. So your rest day does not mean have to sit on the couch and do nothing all day. You can do other activities. I just encourage my patients to really take it easy on the heavy duty lifting or heavy duty running that they do and they enjoy regularly.
I think that's a good tip. That's something maybe Hawk every once in a while. My man doesn't like his rest days. He likes his cheat days, but the rest days. That's put you on the spot, but we've already talked about it on here.
Yeah,
so
we all know about the cheat.
Everyone knows Hawk's opinion on cheat days and rest days. So
cheat day is slightly concerning, but it works for him. So do what works for you. That's the take home.
That's it. And Hawk's his own special character. All right, so that's that's our first segment. So we're gonna take a quick break, and then we'll be back with some more Duel talk. Duel is your source for motivational apparel. Head on over to www.duelthreads.com today. Listeners of the podcast can get 10% off their entire order. Simply go to checkout and enter discount code DUELTALK. That's discount code DUELTALK for 10% off your entire order. Head on over to www.duelthreads.com today.
Welcome back, Warriors, to our second segment of Duel Talk Episode 3, here with Jenna and Brian. How's it going?
Great.
Feeling good.
Feeling good so far.
All right, so Jenna, I've maybe or maybe not had a serious shoulder injury before in my life, and maybe or maybe not have gone to the doctor. But if you get injured or you feel really sore, how do you tell the difference between the two, and what are kind of the things that you want to look for?
So I think it's a common problem, especially in sports injuries. A lot of times, right, when we're new, we automatically associate pain with being our body's way of telling us that, hey, there's something physically or physiologically wrong with us. But then we become these seasoned veterans who think we can rub dirt on it and make it better ourselves, and we kind of just don't go to the doctor, and that's it. And so my advice then is to start to know your body a little bit as you go along, right? So soreness is going to happen after a heavy-duty lift, a very long run, or maybe if you're just getting into this and you haven't really been moving it in a while, soreness is going to be really, really common. The difference between soreness and pain is that kind of red flag feeling, right? That any of your taking rest or taking it easy isn't making it better. Whether you are maybe taking like an anti-inflammatory or some type of like Advil or pain medication, that's really not making it better. Or honestly, if it's really starting to limit your day-to-day life, your functional limitations, as a physical therapist, that's what we swear by. Can you get through your day without it really limiting you? If the answer to that question is no, I highly recommend seeking medical attention at that point, whether you go direct access to a physical therapist to get kind of one-on-one sports-related advice or diagnoses, or you just go see your general primary care practitioner. Those are two really great options, but overall, really getting to know your body and figuring out, did I do something to cause this pain, or is this something a little bit more? Look for those red flags.
And I think both Henry and I are two of the examples that you would bring up as people who don't go and get things checked out. People who follow us on Duel know I broke my finger and tore a tendon, and I waited 10 days before I went to the doctor to get that checked out. Meanwhile, I couldn't move my finger.
Oh,
so
no.
don't
be
like
that.
Don't be like me, and don't be like Henry. But
so I was benching once, and my spotter was not paying attention, and I felt a very sharp pain in my left shoulder. Is that something that's associated with an injury, or?
So my question usually, if you were a patient coming to see me, would be, number one, have you experienced that pain before, right? And if so, what did you do about it? How long did it take to go away? On a scale of 0 to 10, and I tell my people this all the time, 0 is no pain at all, 10's like, get me to the emergency room, right? What would you give that pain? If you were coming in to seek healthcare rehabilitation after that type of incident, I think that it's worthy of like going through a full diagnosis screen, just because sharp pain like that lifting or exercise or health should not be painful, right? Soreness expected, pain not so much.
Yeah, I think that's important. I mean, something when I remember when I first started out, being overweight and, being heavy on top of, trying to lift and run and do all the other kind of stuff. Once I started getting into the gym and do different things, I started feeling, different pains or what I, associated as pain, but it's really soreness. So anybody that's really starting to just, if you're just starting to get into fitness, things like that, just try to be cognizant of it, like Jenna's saying, and take it from there. Once you think, you got those red flags, then for sure get them checked out. I mean, I've had different things like the finger, that's a pretty bad example, but I've had like, I'm a runner too, or some semblance of one at least, and I've had different things, muscle imbalance like you were talking about. I've had that in my knee before, and I wasn't sure. The first thing I thought, I came up, I was doing a 5K, I remember, and I was coming up on the 3rd mile, and I just couldn't, I kept going, but it was just some of the worst pain that I had ever felt running. And I went to the doctor, and his thing was, the muscle imbalance, and for that, it's like you broke down, just started to do the stretching and different things like that. But the same way you said, the first thing I thought was, that's it, something's gone. Something's not attached anymore.
Absolutely. It can be nerve wracking, but again, and I think even from a smaller scale, right? If you're doing a small home workout, or even if you're at physical therapy rehabilitation, you're going to be sore from something that looks really, really ridiculously simple, right? A lot of these lower level exercises that are, I like to tell people, they're waking your muscles up a bit. You could very well be sore the next day. You could be very well sore the next 2 days. But I think it's recognizing that there was a precipitating factor to really cause that soreness, as opposed to like what Henry was talking about, that sharp stabbing pain. That's not necessarily normal. So keeping a lookout for those ouch red flags.
Right. And so speaking of soreness, I know there's this kind of false dichotomy going around that lactic acid buildup is what causes your muscles to be sore. And I know you've gone on a little bit of a rant with that with me before. So I just want to see if I could get it back out of you, because it was quite entertaining for a while, but I don't remember really much of it.
Well, that's great. You're putting me on the spot. I feel like I have a tendency to rant about a lot of things, so thanks for that. But as far as lactic acid, right, it gets this really terrible reputation as being the be-all, end-all of any type of pain or soreness that we're feeling, and it's not necessarily true. A lot of the pain or discomfort that we feel after exercise can be related to the muscles remodeling in and of itself, right? So it's not necessarily lactic acid. You don't necessarily need to like run and elevate your legs the second you stop running, things of that nature. I think it's being cognizant of every individual aspect that goes into your routine, right? So whether you're a weightlifter or you're a runner, you're going to be sore, and the answer is not always lactic acid. So that's the short and sweet version of what was probably like a 45-minute rant that you had to put up with. So I appreciate that.
No, I think it was. But I'm pretty sure I probably learned a lot. But, you know, as usually I forget a lot of things, too. So it's probably in the back of my brain somewhere.
It's in there somewhere, right?
Can we break down a little bit? I know people always tend to ask me, even though I'm nowhere near an expert and I don't have any of the science background that either of you two have, then they still ask me anyway because I go to a gym. But protein, you know, whether it's from, you know, just foods that contain high in protein, or if you're taking, you know, protein powders, protein shakes, people always ask me, you know, are you getting enough? Are you getting too much? And it depends on the person. It depends on their fitness level and all that kind of stuff. But just protein on a general level, how it works behind the scenes for somebody that's really just starting to get into it and starting to try to understand how to incorporate protein into their diet and, you know, properly do so.
Absolutely. And so I think a big part about health and wellness, right? I don't even consider it fitness all the time. More so, it's about a lifestyle, right? It's health and wellness, is nutrition and having a balanced diet. And so we know that protein in and of itself, amino acids, they're the building blocks of muscle. So as you continue to grow muscle, remodel muscle, whatever the case may be, however you want to look at it per se, increasing the protein intake in your diet is going to be really helpful in not only gaining muscle mass, but maintaining it. I tell my patients largely that if you are taking a protein supplement, such as like a whey-based protein or a casein-based protein, it's totally okay. Just don't overdo it, right? There are other organ systems in our body other than our muscles. And so overdoing it with the protein is it's not going to miraculously make you into Arnold overnight. It's about being balanced, right? So we incorporate our proteins, carbohydrates, and healthy fats. And I think in and of itself, that's the key to health and wellness, as opposed to saying like, let's overload on the protein. And so it really comes down to a biological and a molecular level as to how the muscles are shaped, what goes into shaping them, and how we can keep them nice and strong.
Yeah, I think that's a recurring theme that we've even talked about probably in the past 2 episodes, is none of this is, you know, once you go to the gym one time or just overnight, you all of a sudden you're lifting all this weight, you're eating all this protein, you're doing all these things to get, you know, if you want to get jacked or more healthy. It's a gradual process that kind of needs to be changed and tuned over time. You know, like we've talked about, I've been lifting for, you know, 10 years, and when I started lifting, it wasn't like what I'm doing now, not even close. It was, you know, barely benching, you know, putting 35s on the bar and benching that because I couldn't do anymore. And really it was just fine tuning that process of getting your form down, gradually increasing the weight, and then, you know, you eventually get to the point where you really know what you're doing and you know exactly how much weight you can do. and then you can start to really push yourself so you don't get yourself injured.
Absolutely. And I had the privilege actually of working with a colleague of mine who's not only a physical therapist, but a strength and conditioning coach and a CrossFit coach, actually. And she is a female who is incredible, who frankly lifts probably more than I could ever dream of lifting. And we got on the conversation of, what goes into health and wellness. And so much of it is dietary coupled with strength and conditioning. And so I think that's a really great point you bring up, right? Just like you start your form from the bottom up, you start your diet or I don't even want to call it a diet really, but your lifestyle from the bottom up. And so those are all things to take into account when you're kind of on this journey of health and wellness.
All right, so speaking of, you kind of used one of my trigger words, if you want to call it. So CrossFit. Let's talk about CrossFit.
I was waiting to hear something, Natty. I'm surprised you waited that long before you said anything. Honestly.
I don't have anything against CrossFit necessarily, except the fact that you're doing heavy Olympic lifts and cardio at the same time. So, last week we talked about breathing while you were benching, and we kind of went to the training mask and how important breathing is. So how important is the breathing while you're lifting, and why is it not really that a good idea to, be doing heavy cardio while you're doing heavy lifting?
So I don't necessarily argue that heavy cardio and heavy lifting don't go together. I think the word heavy in and of itself is something that we might like to eliminate from our vocabulary as we start to gain our kind of health, wellness, fitness, strength, conditioning, that sort of thing. I think the issues that we see with CrossFit, and something that I think the CrossFit community as a whole is getting better about, is the fact that these heavy-duty Olympic lifts are oftentimes done by individuals who are just getting into fitness, and so their form is broken down, they're pushing a little bit too much weight, and then you couple it with heavy-duty cardiovascular activity, and as far as I'm concerned, if done by someone who perhaps is a little bit behind the curve, that's kind of a recipe for a disaster. So I've worked with several patients who do CrossFit, both for at the quote-unquote Olympic level or at a higher level, as well as people who are really just getting started. I've seen patients I had a couple athletes who competed in the CrossFit Games, and I had the privilege of meeting the sweetest woman. She was, I think, 62, I want to say, and she had just started CrossFit herself. So my advice to both of those people and in both realms was take it slow and listen to your body. And I think I don't like to knock any particular exercise because I always tell people whatever makes you happy. I mean, I'm about to run 26.2 miles. That sounds a little crazy, but if it makes you happy, be smart about it. So that's kind of my overview of CrossFit and my feelings of CrossFit.
All right, so that's segment 2 here on Duel Talk episode 3. We'll be back after the commercial break with part 3. Make sure to follow Duel on all of our social media channels at Duel Threads on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. All right, and we're back on Duel Talk episode 3, the final segment, the final countdown, if you will. And we're just kind of, we got a lot of information out of Jenna, and now we're just going to kind of cool it down, bring it down. Just like a good workout, you need a little cool down at the end, whether it's walking out, whatever your thing is. So just, Jenna, you mentioned the marathon. What are you doing to get ready for those 26 miles?
Sleeping or trying to.
That's good.
So I highly recommend to anyone interested in running a marathon, get a plan together. I'm a huge planning type of person, so that worked well with me.
I know that, yeah.
So I've been actually working on a 16-week program since August or so, and kind of started slowly with my mileage and picking up on long runs on the weekend while rehabbing myself. So it's kind of weird when you're the physical therapist rehabbing your own issues that you cause. So it's always an interesting experience.
So where does one go to find? I've always looked into doing, basic 5K training, or, if you're doing a marathon or half marathon, where's the best place to look to kind of get a schedule and a routine down for that?
Sure. So a lot of the races actually will offer you a training program. I happen to hail from the finer New York metropolitan area, so I am a member of New York Roadrunners. We've got a really great training program through them. Additionally, a lot of the big marathons, the Chicago Marathon puts out a really cool training program. You can also look at some websites like Runner's World, I'm a big fan of, also Active or USA Track and Field, things like that. Especially coming right off the Olympics, track and field and running's got a lot of publicity now, and it's got a little heat, so I'm expecting this race season to be pretty busy as people get inspired by watching athletes represent the country.
What's the longest race you've done? I'm assuming half marathon, or?
Yeah, I ran my first half marathon. It's so funny. So I've been running for about 12, 13 years, and I finally ran my first half this year. So now I got a taste of competing again, which I haven't done in a very long time. So I kind of got the fever back, and I've been competing ever since all summer. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be 26.2 the day before my birthday. So that's not one way to ring it in.
Which, you know what that means.
Which means it's Henry's birthday.
We're back to back.
Guys, it always comes back to Henry.
It always comes back. It's always Henry. It's always all about Henry. At the end of the day, it comes.
We're going to change the name for the show. It's going to be the Hawk Show.
Henry, when you running your first marathon?
Oh, God. Never.
Nothing in the works yet?
No, I haven't really worried about that yet. I don't even think I could do that. I would be so bored. I don't know what I would do with myself.
Well, you could probably lift something along the way. We can get you those little hand weights or something like that, and you can just go to town. I don't know. That would probably keep you a little bit busy. We can get you like some bright colored ones, keep your attention that way too.
Yeah.
You just be cruising along New York City streets or whatever marathon you pick.
Just running around with hand weights in my hand. Well, okay, so speaking of hand weights, there's people that I see in the gym with ankle weights on their ankles. What is the purpose of that? Why do they do that? And is it not good or good for you?
So I guess my question to you to counter it is, what exercises are these people doing ankle weights with? Cardio, or are they just
running on the treadmill? Yeah.
So I guess the general idea of that is the concept of supersetting, if you will, right? So if we're doing an upper body workout, we're going to superset instead of taking a break. I think a lot of people think that running can constitute a lower extremity workout. Personally, I consider myself a little bit more of a naturalist when it comes to running. Like, I don't believe in shoe type, and it's just a personal feeling towards stuff, and it's what works for me, right? So I don't necessarily go with the ankle weight regimen. If you want to throw them on when you're doing Stairmaster, or even if you're just walking, I don't see an issue with it. But I think when you're running, there's such a finite mechanics to gait and running in and of itself that I don't really like to mess with that cycle. I like to let the human body do its thing, and we correct unless there's injuries. But otherwise, running and I have always agreed, because it's something that you just let happen, right? You don't think too much about it.
Henry definitely doesn't think too much about it.
Definitely not.
He would do. He wouldn't know.
Fair point.
He wouldn't know that runner's
running is definitely not my priority.
Very fair point.
And it's bulking season now, so I don't want to lose too much weight.
Oh,
you got to ring in the season.
About the gains.
No, I think this year I've never done a really true bulking cutting season. I've always just kind of done whatever. But I think this year is going to be the year that I'm at like 206 now. I think I want to get up 212, 215-ish maybe, hopefully.
Pack it
and then
on,
bring
baby.
it back down in the spring would be nice, but we'll see.
So that's right up your alley then, gaining weight. People know from your cheat days. I mean, a good healthy weight. We're not going to eat. I don't think we're going to eat 3 DiGiorno pizzas a day, are we? Or
no, that's just one day a week, really.
One day a week. That's it.
Yeah.
Otherwise healthy.
Henry, this is a show about health and wellness. Come on now.
That's it.
Well, I've always thought that it really boosted my metabolism when you eat more sugars and carbs than you normally do one day a week. That's how I justify it. So I'm gonna stick with that.
Then I get those.
To your body.
Then I get those texts Sunday night. Oh man, feeling like garbage. Oh
terrible.
man, I feel so slow. Oh man, how am I gonna eat another pizza? It's like,
The
oh.
best are the Snapchats. You're like, you're actually consuming that, or do you have a family of 4 to feed? Like,
No,
That's
just
true.
me. All right, so Jenna, in between running marathons and being a doctor, what do you like to do? Are you involved in any extracurriculars, any charities, organizations? What kind of other activities are you involved with?
Yeah, so I'm actually really into volunteer work. I think it's great to get involved with your community. And so I actually have been working recently. A patient of mine was a former Division I softball player who unfortunately went in for a surgery and sustained a spinal cord injury. And so I've been working with her along with a team of physical therapists out in Manhattan to rehab her. And so her newest goal actually is to compete in the 2020 Paralympics as a marathoner, which is why I'm running a marathon this year. So we are in the process of getting a not-for-profit organization off the ground to help not only fund some of her rehabilitation and pro bono work after her insurance runs out, but also to kind of get her the necessary equipment to compete and to really take it all the way. And so I am a huge proponent of Team USA and every single accolade or event that we participate in. So as that stands, we're really working hard to get this off the ground for her. So I will totally keep you guys in the loop. I know Duel is interested in getting involved with it. We love
100%.
inspiration, and we happen to also like that they hail from the fine state of New York. We got some good Rangers fans out there.
That's it.
So,
Let's see the Rangers license plate on the wall back there, Brian.
Yeah, for those all you podcast listeners out there don't get to see my wall behind me, but we got a Rangers license plate up there, and hockey season's right around the corner. I think it's about 30 days away, so I mean, hockey's back at the Garden soon, and I can't wait. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's such a great cause, and everything that you're doing with that, and obviously Duel. That's what we're all about, is people fighting back from whatever it is, whether they're looking to go after their PhDs and beyond, or they're coming back from injuries or something as serious as that. We obviously we heard about that story, and we want to be involved as best we can, and we think what you're doing is great, and running that marathon in honor of that, it's awesome. It's awesome.
We love it. We stand for it. When you get involved with organizations like this, it makes it easy. So I appreciate all your help.
Of course. And then I just want to bring it back. I mean, we talked a little bit. We brought a little back of Henry's history, how he got into fitness. Myself and Dan on the last episode where we came into it. You said you've been running for so long, but has fitness just always been a part of your life from a young age, playing sports as a young girl, or when did it really kind of kick off?
No, I'm like the least coordinated person alive. Why do you think I run? I am very proud to say that I am a survivor of chronic illness myself. I am a kidney failure survivor, and so when you're up against the odds and you're told that health and wellness is going to be the secret to longevity and to you really getting to live your life to its fullest, you get out there and you hit the pavement. And so I really took that into my own hands, like I said, about 12, 15 years ago, and I've been doing it ever since. And it's not just for fun, and it's not for physique. And sure, I'm a young woman in my 20s, and it falls into that category a lot. But to everybody out there, I encourage you, find a personal reason for it and invest in yourself. It's a lifestyle. It's a marathon, not a sprint. So that's how I got into it.
That's it. That's what we preach all the time too. It's such a lifestyle. Some people, kind of fall into these crash diets or anything like that, or they try to fit into a size blank dress for this event or that event. Anybody that's serious and making the lifestyle changes one step at a time and going from there. I have people ask me all the time, how I did it or how I got started, specifically with weight loss, and it's always just take one step at a time. Something we talked about earlier in the episode, not jumping right into something, going 110%, figure out what you're doing, do it correctly, otherwise you're going to end up knocking yourself back before you even get the chance to start.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. It's a good memo.
So, we want to thank you, Jenna, for coming on with us and, all your knowledge and everything. It was very good to hear, and I hope everybody out there enjoyed it. We'd love to have you back sometime. That'd be great.
Thanks so much, guys. This was fun.
Of course. So for Henry, Jenna, I'm Brian Galloway. This is Dual Talk Episode 3, and we'll see you all in a few weeks. Peace.
Baby, I know I'm a beast, like I be howling at the moon.